thanks for coming back to another volume of the Cinema Chronicles right here on the Vick Flicks podcast. I am your host, the Sobro's resident film critic, Brandon Vick. I'm a proud member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association, as well as a board member of the Music City Film Critics Association. And I've got 4 movies for you, and they are each very different from one another. So I like to pride myself on having these shows have a variety, and this one has got it. Let's see, July 4th happened. I don't know how everyone spent theirs. I actually, my family and I went to Boston for the first time, and, it's a beautiful city. I actually quite enjoyed it. It's laid out really well, and you can actually walk around, and I didn't see one single Old Red restaurant, so it was really nice. They had parks for my son. I wish I had a Fitbit thing or something that tracked, because I'm pretty sure I walked over 200 miles, but it was worth it. I highly recommend it. It's a town full of wonderful history. I thought it was really cool to be in Boston on July 4th. We were out near the harbor watching fireworks. So it was really cool. None of us had ever been. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we've never been. And we spent about a week, and that's all. I think that's all you really need. We ended up going out to Cambridge to see Harvard Square and the Harvard University, and went to spooky Salem, Massachusetts as well. So it's a lot of fun. If you ever get a chance to go, you'll enjoy it. But I will tell you this, there is not one crumb of food that's not overly expensive. You go anywhere and you're paying for it. Some's better than others, but holy crap. Lunch, dinner, breakfast, whatever. Your check's going to be a biggin. Also, before I even get into these movies, there's a couple things I have to address. The first thing is that this show is brought to you by Memo's Mexican Kitchen. It is not the best Mexican food in Nashville, Tennessee, and I dare say maybe even further. The other thing I want to address is that no, Deadpool and Wolverine is not featured in this show. There's a lot of things that have to happen for this show to happen, and scheduling just didn't work out. But for the most part, it is the fault of Marvel. Or it may be not, because I forgot. I did email Kevin Feige about something. Well, first, it's at least been 4 years since Nashville has not gotten a press screening for a Marvel movie. So I would like to think that more than just me were a little bit surprised that we weren't invited to a screening of this beforehand. Because if we were, I could be talking about it with you all today. But I can't, because they didn't. But then, that's the first part of this story. Now, are you ready for the twist? After realizing that, I emailed Kevin Feige and said, you know what, Kev? I welcome this non-invitation, because I like to consider myself a man of the people, and I want to go see this movie with the common folk. I don't need some quiet, nice press screening for this. I want to be rowdy with the crowd. So, you know what? Even every future screening, you can shove up your ass, and don't ever invite Nashville. So I really stuck it to him. I can't wait to see Captain America: Brave New World with the general audience. next year, where Harrison Ford whips out his big red Hulk dick. So it's not in the trailer that I'm sure the whole world has seen, but as press, I get email updates. So that was one of them. But so anyway, Deadpool and Wolverine, I am going to see it, obviously, but I'm not reviewing it on here today. And you know what? I'm perfectly fine with it, and I bet you are too. So let's get things started with I'm gonna say it, one of the most terrifying movies in the last 100 years. It's called Longlegs. I'm sure you probably have heard of it, and I know what you're thinking. Brandon, that's a bit much. One of the most terrifying movies of the past 100 years? Well, I'll be honest with you. I did that on purpose, and some would say, Brandon, that's overhyping it. Well, people did that to this movie. The movie is actually, it's really good, but there are aspects of it that have been well overhyped. And for those that have already seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. Let's kick things off with the IMDb synopsis of the FBI agent Lee Harker, played by Micah Monroe, is a gifted new recruit assigned to the unsolved case of an elusive serial killer called Longlegs, who's played by the one and only Nicolas Cage. As the case takes complex turns, unearthing evidence of the occult, Harker discovers a personal connection to the merciless killer and must race against time to stop him before he claims the lives of another innocent victim or family, whatever. I gotta say this. If you have watched any of the trailers or the marketing for Longlegs, there's no way you couldn't not be intrigued. All of that stuff really made it feel like a different kind of horror that had to be seen. And honestly, job well done to Neon, who backed this film. They did an amazing job by giving us so little, but in return made us that much more excited about it. Via IndieWire says, Longlegs director Oz Perkins says the wild marketing campaign is all Neon. He's quoted as saying, I would be a jackass to take too much credit. Says the marketing campaign for Neon's Longlegs is the most ambitious for a horror movie in recent times. There's a Zodiac killer level secret code spread in the Seattle Times, a phone number you can dial in to hear star Nicolas Cage whisper threats in a creepy voice, and is advertised on an LA billboard, and the eerie and elusive trailers and teasers that have dropped so far, mostly leaving Cage's satanic serial killer out of the bag. I called this number, and it was really creepy. You hear him sort of like barely breathing, and then as he's like whispering, it was really, really weird. But it makes total sense, obviously, after you see the movie. Now, what couldn't be explained is, as I was listening to that creepy voicemail, I got a chub. So that still has not been explained. But everything else is once you see Longlegs. The Palme d'Or and Oscar-winning indie film Neon, we're talking about, is going all out with the lead up to Longlegs, headed for theaters July 12th. It's a rare feat of marketing where audiences still are not entirely sure what the movie is about. And in a time where most studio trailers sum up the first 2/3 of a movie in under 3 minutes, Cage also had recently told Entertainment Weekly why you won't see his character in all his full, deranged, devil-worshipping glory in any of the trailers. He says, Oz Perkins says, I would be a jackass to take too much credit for what they've done. Perkins said, Neon really responded strongly to the movie. The raw materials of the movie really excited them. The way it looks, the way it feels, the way it sounds. they asked me early on, do we have your permission to kind of go nuts? And I said, what else are we doing here? Go for it. Do your thing. So, so on top of that, it's tremendously easy to get caught up in a movie's hype when you're flooded with these special first glowing reactions and or these early reviews. Superhero movies instantly come to mind, but it does happen with horror flicks too. And it has certainly happened with Longlegs. People were literally losing their shit on social media, acting like you have never experienced this kind of terror. It's the scariest movie to ever exist. That's why I kind of wanted to seduce you with my most terrifying movie of in the past 100 years. And it works. It doesn't it? It always works. And it's the scary movies. They say it's the scariest movie to ever exist. But here's the thing. It's not. What it is, though, is creepy and at times chilling with an amazing atmosphere of just pure dread. Again, Longlegs is indeed a bit overhyped, yet it is highly effective all the same. Unnerving and disturbing, Osgood Perkins, or Oz, as he likes to be called, beautifully crafts a psychological thriller that creeps under your skin. There are aspects of the story that are very familiar in a genre like this. It has the cliches that kind of come with this investigating the occult satanic cases that Lee is pursuing. But even so, the focal themes of childhood trauma and the pure evil that's at your doorstep is equally frightening and fascinating. Alicia Witt is sensational, and what Micah Monroe, who I don't know if you've ever seen it, follows, but you should. It's awesome. There's a sequel coming out that she acts like is better than the first. She exhibits as Lee. What she's able to exhibit as Lee is phenomenal. The physical detail she exhibits is great. The emotional weight she shows in her face, her eyes, the way she turns, even the way she breathes. It says so much without saying a word. You feel her portrayal of Lee. Now to Nick Cage as the title character. He's getting the most attention and, as already mentioned, has basically been hidden from all the trailers. But a lot has been said about his transformation for the role. Words like unrecognizable, demented, iconic, they've all been used. This is another article in IndieWire. It says, even Longlegs star Micah Monroe was kept in the dark over Nicolas Cage's shocking and overwhelming serial killer transformation. It says, much has been made of Neon's canny choice to obscure the villain of Perkins' latest film and all its marketing. That air of mystique was already in place long before a single trailer was cut. Hell, even Cage's co-star Monroe, who plays the FBI agent hot on the satanic serial killer's tail, didn't meet, air quotes, Longlegs until Cage's last day on set. She says, Oz wanted to keep us completely separate. No one showed me any photos of him. Oz wanted to be a complete surprise for that scene when we interact for the first time. Just imagine that. It was completely shocking and overwhelming. The first time I met him, the cameras were rolling and they called action, and I opened the door and there he was. And before the movie came out, on Twitter, the Longlegs official handle had a thing that was showing where the first time that she had seen him, they basically were bragging about her heart rate hitting 170 beats per minute. So I mean, again, great marketing. You don't know what she's seeing, but my God, you've got to find out. Now, I will say, after seeing the film and seeing Nicolas Cage's Longlegs, my heart rate hit about 170, only because I was even more terrified because he looked a lot like my ex-wife. So imagine not knowing and seeing some satanic serial killer and then realizing, oh my God, that is Lisa. So I think this probably doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it. There's no boundaries for a talent like Nicolas Cage. And granted, you haven't ever seen him like this. That is true. He's actually really not in it that much, but he's in it just enough to rattle the nerves without taking the air out of the tense overall experience that you get with Longlegs. There's even a thing about where, as far as with the about Nicolas Cage and kind of where I guess his mind was when trying to put this appearance together. This was in the movie's press notes that Longlegs' face was a result of repeated plastic surgeries gone wrong. It said when Perkins initially approached special makeup effects artist Harlow McFarlane about creating the face of Longlegs, McFarlane says, from the beginning, Oz always had this glam rock vibe in his head. The big hair, the garish makeup, the superficial aesthetic fixation that might lead to a person to go under the knife so they could remain forever young. But more than being driven by style, Longlegs would be a man driven by obsessive devotion. His jam is really that he's trying to make himself beautiful for the devil, explains McFarlane. He's in love with the devil and he's trying to impress him, so he's gone through all these plastic surgery botch jobs to make himself look as pretty as he can for the devil. Everything he does is for this evil force that he's trying to impress. So that kind of shows you where Longlegs is at and where Nicolas Cage, the road that he went down, along with the effects guy. It's his presence, as far as Nicolas Cage as Longlegs, his presence is always horrifying, but I will say it does sometimes come off as a little funny. I get why Longlegs is... I get why the movie Longlegs is keeping him from us until you actually see the movie. But I think all of this talk that was building about him isn't quite warranted. I think the people who have seen it probably felt the same way. I know some reactions have taken my side. It falls under a case that happens in a lot of these types of films. The more we see, the more that it's almost entirely based on appearance and not much else. And even that isn't as jaw-dropping as others may lead you to believe. There's intrigue there for sure, but Perkins balancing him with the rest of the film, I have a feeling was probably pretty tricky, but he doesn't allow Cage to do a total takeover. And speaking of Perkins, I had no idea how personal this film was for him. Via IndieWire, Osgood Perkins explains how Longlegs is an ode to his celebrity parents' dark backstory. It says a mother can lie out of love. It says Perkins funnels his own difficult past into what turns out to be a mystical procedure with a tormented mother-daughter storyline at its center. His father, Anthony Perkins, as we know from Psycho, he died of AIDS complications in '92 after a lifetime in the closet, and much speculation about his personal life aired by the likes of Confidential magazine, including an on and off affair with Tab Hunter. Perkins' mother, Barry Berenson, was a model and actress who stayed with Anthony until the end, keeping her husband's sexuality and illness a secret from her children. They married in 1973 after Anthony tried conversion therapy. Berenson died on September 11th in the first American Airlines plane that hit the World Trade Center. Goes on to say that Longlegs is his most personal film yet. In its own strange way, it's an ode to the precarious secret his mother maintained and the generational tensions that bloomed out of lying for a long time to her children, which included Osgood's brother, singer-songwriter Elvis Perkins, about her husband's sexual identity. Says, everything I try to do, I try to make it about myself, only so that it creates a truth for me and an honesty, and I know I'm never full of shit if I'm talking about myself, Perkins says. As coded as it might be, and as many layers of other stuff on it that there are, at the end of the day, all the movies I generate are essentially based on my experience, and that tends to be my experience with my parents. He goes on because he also did Gretel and Hansel, which I actually liked. It's not the best, but you could tell that Perkins really was a talented guy behind the camera. And he says in the case of that movie, he said he felt like he missed an opportunity to make a movie about the fact that a mother can lie to their children. He said, the mother can create a cover story, but a mother can submerge the truth in what she feels is the service of the family and how that creates what it creates. In the case of my family, I was dealing with public figure parents. My father was a gay man who was closeted, and in the world that we lived in, it wasn't acceptable. And it still isn't, as insane as that is. My mother made this decision that wasn't going to be true for our family. I wanted Gretel and Hansel to be more about that, and I didn't get there with it because it wasn't my script, and for 100 other reasons. When I set into Longlegs, that was the core truth. A mother can lie, and she can lie out of love. So going into Longlegs thinking you're going to be scared shitless is the wrong mindset to have, and I am going to almost guarantee that you'll be disappointed. However, I do see it as an insult as well to the film because it's doing so much more in its storytelling than just to make you jump. Perkins is in search of something more deep-rooted and painful while dancing with the devil straight to hell. Longlegs gets a Vick's Flicks rating of 3.5 out of 5. And coming up next, we're going to go back and we're going to be hanging out with Gru and his crew. Despicable Me 4. Wow. So, this is per Rotten Tomatoes. In this new chapter, as Gru and Lucy and their girls, they welcome a new member to the Gru family, Gru Jr., who is intent on tormenting his dad. Gru faces a new nemesis in Maxime Lamont, played by Will Ferrell, and his femme fatale girlfriend, Valentina, Sofia Vergara, and the family is forced to go on the run. So, I'm gonna make this quick because Despicable Me 4 is just like all the others except worse. I think this franchise is officially on its last leg. It's been 7 years since Despicable Me 3, and this is definitely the weakest of them all, and I'm including those Minions movies. I think there's 2 of them, Minions and then the one about the rise of Gru. With a terrific voice cast that has Steve Carell, Kristen Wiig, Will Ferrell, Stephen Colbert, and Sofia Vergara, none of them can liven this thing up. The story is lazy and it's unfunny, and I know people are going to be pissed, but I'm going to say it. The Minions have worn out their welcome. They are more obnoxious than anything else here. And yes, I do realize I am not the exact demographic for this, and it's for the kids. And listen, they will enjoy it without knowing they deserve much better. But listen, make no mistake, us grown-ups, we sure know it. I really think it's a pretty sad excuse for family entertainment. I really like the first one, and I feel like with each one, it's kind of been a little less and a little less, and I really don't, and I mean, it made a ton of money over the July 4th weekend, so I'm sure 5 is coming down the pipeline in a few years, but there's nothing to these anymore, and when you have films like that has now become the number 1 animated movie, highest grossing animated movie of all time, like Inside Out 2, it just makes these Despicable Me movies, besides the first one, they just make them, I don't know, they just make them look so irrelevant and just forgettable. I know that they're lighter and they're supposed to be more fun, but I wasn't feeling any of that with this one. So Despicable Me 4, I told you I was going to make this quick. Despicable Me 4 is getting a Vick's Flicks rating of 2 out of 5. And coming up next, we got a nice little French sexy movie. Okay, so the film is called Last Summer here in Nashville. It's playing at the Bell Court. And in full transparency, I'm not the least bit familiar with with our French provocateur, Catherine Breillat. I practiced that a few times. This marks her first film in 10 years, but apparently her work has been considered quite shocking. Per BFI, where it says, where to begin with Catherine Breillat. Her erotic art house dramas offers no titillation or consolatory escapism. Their take on sexual politics is philosophical and coldly analytical. Their casual brutalities mirror us in a universe of random danger. Oozing with blood and fluids, they draw as much on gross-out horror as romance. What they bring to the table, or indeed to the bed, is a radical challenge to the taboos around the female body. Breillat exhibits that which has been deemed obscene and to be hidden by the patriarchy amid an almost unbreachable communication divide between the sexes. The contempt with which men often react to their fears is center stage. The rapes depicted in several of her films have made them controversial, as has her sometime inclusion of explicit, unsimulated sex, though hers is a cinema of reflection rather than consumption. I have got to say, Last Summer seems very tame by these descriptions of her previous work. Let me pull this from Rotten Tomatoes and give you a little rundown. So, a remarkably nuanced, radiant Leah Drucker plays Anne, an attorney who has plateaued in her marriage to Pierre, Olivier Rebordin, a distracted businessman. His son, troubled 17-year-old Theo, played by Samuel Kirscher, from a previous marriage, has recently returned to Pierre's ineffectual and despondent care. When Pierre leaves town for a business trip, Anne and Theo, confined under the same roof for the first time, find themselves in the throes of an unexpected and dangerously lustful affair, threatening the stability of the household. Music by Kim Gordon heightens the erotic tension of Last Summer, a film that boldly surveys power dynamics, female desire, and fulfillment. That's right, this kid is doing a stepmother. Now, let's continue. This being my introduction to Catherine, I found this to be deliciously seductive with unrestrained lust and even quite thrilling as the story unfolds and Anne shows perhaps her true side of who she is, or the very least who she can be. This is adapted from the 2019 Danish film Queen of Hearts. It's an authentic and complex depiction of love, rebellion, age, and, of course, sex. Leah Drucker is exceptional in a role that exhibits such a sophistication, though with this true sense of recklessness and deception that lies just beneath the surface. Now, it's a bit disappointing that Breillat can't manage to get us all the way invested, with some of her storytelling decisions coming off as routine and less than transfixing, where by the end, the audience is not as emotionally affected as we should be. However, when we circle back to Drucker's Anne, she's the reason why Last Summer still works as well as it does. This is taken from the Vulture review talking about Drucker, where with her performance as Anne, saying that she's something more complicated. A woman trying to have things both ways, to dabble in the transgressive without risking her advantageous perch in the mainstream, and to wield the weapons of the victim-blaming society she otherwise battles when they are to her advantage. It's not the sex that harms Theo, it's the mindfuck of what he's subjected to. after dreamily playing tourist in Theo's youthful existence, Anne drags him into the brutal realities of the grown-up world. The results are unflinching and breathtakingly ugly. You couldn't be blamed for wanting to look away. Last Summer's getting a VixFlix rating of 3.5 out of 5 stars. It feels somewhat taboo, but as I said, and maybe we're not as emotionally invested as we should be, but it is still seductive, and it, like I said, it covers so much between love and sex and rebellion, and it's well worth the watch. I think it's kind of one of these hidden small hidden film that's worthwhile for those who are willing to go find it. And coming up next, it's the last one on the list today, and it's about them gosh darn tornadoes. Hold on to your hats, there's a tornado coming through. Bet you that sounded real. Twisters. Excuse me. Per Rotten Tomatoes, Daisy Edgar Jones stars as Kate Cooper, a former storm chaser haunted by a devastating encounter with a tornado during her college years, who now studies storm patterns on screen safely in New York City. She's lured back to the open plains by her friend Javi, played by Anthony Ramos, to test a groundbreaking new tracking system. There, she crosses paths with Tyler Owens, played by Glenn Powell, the charming and reckless social media superstar who thrives on posting his storm-chasing adventures with his raucous crew. The more dangerous, the better. A storm season intensifies, terrifying phenomena never seen before are unleashed, and Kate, Tyler, and their competing teams find themselves squarely in the paths of multiple storm systems converging over central Oklahoma in the fight of their lives. Sounds familiar? Sounds like the first one, doesn't it, folks? So, I'm going to let you in on a secret. I was very unpopular in a Sobros Slack channel because quite a few people in our friend circle had seen this movie and was ranting and raving about it. And so, you know what I did? I went in there and I shit on it. Because I'm a mature 38-year-old man. I said, hey, it ain't that great, okay? So for those of you that are acting like it's so cool and can't get enough of Glenn Powell, and I'm going to go see it 4 more times, you are a lunatic. And I'll tell you why. Now, the second thing that's probably going to make me very unpopular is I understand that Mr. Powell is being hailed as the next big movie star. And I get it. Listen, he's charming, he's charismatic, handsome as hell. But his roles, as of now, haven't really been anything special or that impressive. I think he caught a lot of eyes in Top Gun Maverick, but let's be honest, he wasn't the main star of it. But, you know, so put that aside. Anyone But You, Hitman, and now this one, I don't really, I see that like he can kind of, you know, maybe makes it easier to digest, but I don't really think any of these have been such this breakout thing or that they're all great movies. I can't say that he ruins any movie. I don't think that, but I don't really know if he gives any movie a real boost either. But in Twisters, he's an Arkansas cowboy who is more than just a hellraiser on his big truck with rockets. Edgar Jones and Ramos have more going on with their respective roles and attempt to make them feel authentic. They kind of flip back and forth between caring and not even trying to care. There's quite a few scenes where it just looks like they're there to say the line so that they can go to get to the next big ass storm storm set piece and get on with it. As far as the rest of the cast, I didn't think they really had any personality or real relevance. I rewatched the original before I went to see this one, and obviously you don't have to see the first one to see this one, and some would say this one's a lot like the first one. So, but it just seemed like everybody that was on these storm tornado chasing teams had they were providing something, whether they had the certain likes or the certain gifts or certain intelligence about something. I mean, they had, the guy that directed Tar was in it. So, I mean, how could you not? Philip Seymour Hoffman. And these they don't do anything. I thought they offered very little to the dynamic of the characters and obviously the excitement of the movie. They might as well just be cardboard cutouts and just let them blow in the wind, folks. Let them blow in the wind. This might surprise people here, but the director of this big summer blockbuster is actually Lee Isaac Chung, who did Minari, which was a sensational film. He essentially has Twisters twirling on repeat from the 96 original. He adds a few little touches here and there. I think the biggest one is really trying to keep its feet somewhat on the ground when dealing with the Twister aftermath. But for the most part, it's nothing new or exciting from a storytelling standpoint. It should be less uninspiring and more fun and exciting. I'm not really sure what the hell Chung and Joseph Kosinski, who is credited for coming up with the story, who also, by the way, is the director of Top Gun Maverick, were feeling to chase this if they aren't going to do anything worthwhile with it. Sorry, that may have sounded like I was yelling. The real thrills, of course, do come from the tornado action set pieces, which look immaculate. In the end, these are what we came here for, and Twisters certainly delivers. They're wildly suspenseful and terrifying, starting from the beginning scenes. Twisters is equally thrilling and tedious, as this is nearly a 30-year sequel that does really more of the same, just in a more uninteresting way. Edgar Jones, Powell, Ramis, they're fine, but then you have the supporting characters who are basically useless. I will say at least the tornado action is sensational. More so, Director Chung does show compassion towards the land and people left devastated by the windy destruction. I think, really in the end, I think Twisters is a decent disaster movie, but it is a pale imitation of the force brought on by the OG. That leaves Twisters with a VixFlix star rating of 2.5 out of 5, and that is gonna do it for this old volume of the Cinema Chronicles right here on the VixFlix podcast. Okay. I am your host, Brandon Vick. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Sir Brandon V. You can find me on Sir Brandon on Letterboxd if you got it. And be sure to check out all of our work at SoBrosNetwork.com. We got a Deadpool and Wolverine podcast up that you can check out. I've got the whole X trilogy that has Maxine, X, and Pearl up there, along with some movie review rewinds that are kind of, it's Hugh Jackman, it's got Ryan Reynolds. I even have X-Men Origins Wolverine when they first met on screen. I think everybody remembers that epic movie. Anyway, all of our merch is up and ready to be bought at SoBrosShop.com. VixFlix podcast stickers. You can buy one, you can buy 100, cover your walls, cover your cars, cover whatever. just as long as it's a VixFlix podcast sticker. And I think the most important thing is to subscribe to the VixFlix podcast on Apple Podcasts, follow us on Spotify, or wherever you take in your shows. Give us a rating and review whenever you have a moment. That's how we get better, and we always want to be better for you guys. Hey, until next month, just go see a damn movie. Ugh.